sort of an integral part of the 50th anniversary, I think.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Well, you know, I never imagined it would be quite as well received as it was, but obviously I'm very happy that it was, and it started really. Do you want me to just carry on talking on it?
You know, go for it. I'm not going to stop you.
It started off in the USA because. And I'm not sure now, I must try and go back and find out exactly which convention it was. It was, you know, like it's a bit like when like famous people were born in certain places, there are blue plaques all over them, various places claim the birth of a particular person. It's a bit like, you know, on various conventions I noticed have been claiming this is where the first idea for the Five-ish Doctors reboot emerged, but I know it might have been at Hurricane Who. But I was asked somewhat a year or so prior to the anniversary year if we were the old Doctors were going to be in the 50th anniversary special, and I never imagined that we would be. But the question kept coming up: do you think you're going to be in the 50th anniversary special? And I got so tired of going, well, I've no idea, but I don't think so. At one convention, I think it was Hurricane Who, or it may have been Roanoke, I think it was Hurricane Who, I replied, Mysticon, I replied, no, but if I'm not, I'm damn well going to make my own. And it was a somewhat foolish thing to say, because of course, because a lot of you out there have recording devices of one description or another, at the very next convention I attended, I was asked, apparently you're going to make your own 50th anniversary special. And it was a sort of a rolling stone that was rolling away from me very quickly, and I realized that at some point along the way, I was damn well going to have to make one. And I made a couple of these short videos when I failed to appear at Gallifrey one year.
Yeah, I remember those.
I did one for Gallifrey one, and then the next year when I actually turned up, I thought it might be fun to do another one. And I just shot them on my own little home video camera with the help of a few friends and leaning on a few relations. Anyway, so that was my plan, and it was. I had this idea in my head that I would ask, you know, the other Doctors, obviously Colin and Sylvester and Tom and Paul, if they would, you know, be involved. And so I duly asked them and explained to them roughly the idea was I was going to just come around with my home video camera and do it. And they looked at me as if I was completely mad. But they did all say yes. And I also asked Stephen Moffat, who I know quite well, if he would take part in this video, and he foolishly said yes. And that was it. Anyway, so I sat down with my little, I suppose it was at the time, I feel like I'm going on too much here.
No. That's what this is about. Now, okay. You mentioned that you contacted the other Doctors. You had so many cameos in there.
Yes.
You worked them on. How many people did you get in touch with before you started doing the script, just to sort of check, or did you just throw them in and go?
I think it was only Colin, Sylvester, Paul, and Tom were the only people I contacted initially, because I thought without them the whole idea basically wouldn't work. And then, as I say, it was at that point about maybe 5-10 minute film. And we started filming, we did a tour of Australia, Colin, Sylvester, Paul and myself. And I did shoot some footage there with my little home video camera, which unfortunately never made it into the end product. Well, for reasons that I'll explain later, but yeah, those shots there were deleted. Anyway, when I came back, I wrote the script. I had the script. I sent it to all of my fellow Doctors, and they kind of liked the idea. They were going to go along with it. I still don't think they really knew what it was. And of course, by that time we were almost into the anniversary year, and we were all very busy. Yeah. Everyone was very busy in that year. So they said they'd sort of they'd help out if they could. And then I sent the script to the BBC in Cardiff because I needed to film. I did a little sequence I needed to film in the studio, and I sent it to Stephen, And I don't think he ever got around to looking at it at all. But it was sort of, it somehow ended up on the desk of the head of series at Cardiff. And she read it and sent me an email saying, please come down here immediately. I thought I was in big trouble. Because, anyway, she wanted to discuss the thing with me, so I came down, and it turned out that they wanted to be involved in some way, because I think they saw it. I think they knew there was a problem, you know, that because so many fans were asking about if it were going to be the 50th anniversary special, I think they thought this filled a little gap.
It does, definitely, because, yeah, the main series show was focused on 10, 11. I mean, of course, you all showed up in some form, which was lovely, but there was this time when there were people going around going, well, if this isn't there, it's not going to be a good 50, if this isn't there, if this isn't there, and this really filled in so many cameos.
I mean, at that time, we had no idea about the fact that Tom was in it. That was
pretty low-key, yeah.
We didn't know anything about that until a long way into the filming of our little piece. But anyway, I sent the script down, and they said, oh yeah, look, here's 25,000 quid. Now I thought foolishly, £25,000 sounded like quite a lot of money. And then we sat down over lunch and we just planned certain things. And by the end of lunch, the £25,000 was gone. Don't take us anywhere at the moment. You know, we're in the middle of this panel. I don't want to end up in medieval Britain or something like that.
They do look like they know what they're doing.
Okay, that's fine. Anyway, so we started pretty much immediately. Suddenly, I was there. And I told this story yesterday, and it's quite true. Anyone who wasn't here yesterday, I'll repeat it. The first thing we shot was with David, the tenant, holding open the door at the side of the studio with the fire extinguisher. And we literally had there was a camera crew there, and so I actually brought my own home camera down, which was now redundant. And the camera guy said, well, okay, we're turning over. And I stood there thinking, well, isn't someone meant to say action? And I thought, oh no, that's me. I'm now the director. And suddenly I'd evolved from just this little home thing into being the director.
So you were sort of pulling like triple duty on this.
I was, yeah. But you know, it was my own fault, really. Anyway, so we did that bit, and then the thing just started to grow. I suppose I got very excited about it. So I would go home at night and I'd write a scene, and it was literally an idea would come up. For example, Georgia one day rang me and said to me, oh, John Barrowman's really pissed off he's not in the 50th anniversary special. And I said, right, well, let's put him in ours then. So we wrote this, actually the scene was originally there, and originally it was written for Mark Gatiss.
Oh,
but
it still works.
I'd forgotten to tell Mark about it, and I thought, well, I'll ask him at some point, because he's a good friend. And I fired him before I even got around to asking him, which is terrible. I don't think he even knows about this now. Heaven forbid if he sees a video. Anyway, he was actually rather busy at the time because he never stops working. So that was there, and then Sylvester rang me up, and I suppose this was the coup. I was actually filming something in the West Indies at the time. Sylvester rang me up and said, I'll try and help out as much as I can, but I have to go back and do some more filming on The Hobbit. And I said, really, are you in The Hobbit? And so two things came out of that. One, I just evolved this idea that Sylvester never stopped talking about being in The Hobbit, which he then picked up and ran with, because actually he didn't really mention it that much before, and the moment I wrote it into the script, he would go around everywhere going, well, of course I'm in The Hobbit, you know. But the best thing was, he said, I've got to go back and film some more on The Hobbit. And I said, well, I thought, well, maybe then we should write Peter Jackson into it. Because I thought it was a rather nice idea if he was stuck in New Zealand, not being used, because he'd said to me, I go back there and I sit around for weeks on end. So I thought, well, let's have him running away, and then Peter Jackson calling him down to the set and he's not there. So Sylvester said, well, I'll try and mention it to Peter. And I think he said he did, but then I got Peter Jackson's email address from Stephen Moffat, and I wrote him an email saying, here's a little idea for this script. Would you consider just filming a very tiny bit? And I thought, well, I didn't think he'd ever reply, really. But he replied about 3 minutes later and said, yes, I certainly would, and I'll get Ian McKellen in it as well. I thought, this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened. Suddenly, I had the best cast of any Doctor Who thing that's ever been done. Really. And also, it was getting longer and longer, which I didn't mind, but the BBC were getting very nervous about. So, a man called Brian Minchin, who was the executive producer of Doctor Who, said, well, I think we'd like a bit more in the script about Cardiff, about the Cardiff studios. So I said, great, okay, well, so I wrote a bit more of that, and we went down. The important thing here also is that at some point, there was a tipping point, where, in Colin and Sylvester's mind, the project went from a bit of fun, but something not really worth bothering about, to being quite important. I think they realised that actually it was quite enjoyable. We went down, we filmed the sequence at Colin's house where he's standing on the lawnmower, which incidentally, it had broken down. I think we did one shot with the lawnmower moving and it broke. So we had to stand him on it in the top, but it actually worked really well. And then Sylvester came along and we managed to get him back from New Zealand for a day. And he really started to think this is something really worth doing. And so I was very grateful for this. They started actually moving things aside in their diaries to make it along to the filming. And Paul, of course, I think probably would have been in it a bit more, but he literally did get a job offer and buggered off to Northern Ireland or something to work in theatre. And so we had to write in a bit where obviously he wasn't there, and that worked out very well as well. And am I boring you yet?
No. What's funny about the bit with Paul is I think a lot of fans sort of took it as this little joke that he ended up in Night of the Doctor, which absolutely nobody knew about, and so people just kind of assumed that was a gag on that.
Well, it did turn into that. It was it was the circumstances that turned it into that, really. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much he would have been in it, would have been prepared to be in it anyway, but because the good, I mean, he's still quite sort of young and good looking, isn't he? So he wasn't like one of us old codgers. Although I'd like to think of myself as slightly less of an old codger than the other two.
Well, he does. Paul does call you the boy band, doesn't he?
Does he?
I heard that somewhere that he calls the three of you the boy band.
Yeah, he must. Yeah, we're his backing group. Anyway, it worked out very well, and we shot, and we finally got. So we had a bit of trouble with John Barrowman, which I should mention.
Really?
Well, we couldn't get through to him because there are these people called agents who are a pain in the arse. And every time we thought of a good idea to get someone in, we would approach their agent. They go, "Oh no, John won't be doing that sort of thing." So we managed to get, of course, through David Tennant, a script to John, and of course John said, "Yeah, no, I'd love to do it." So his agent then came up with this rather strange stipulation that he would do it on condition that there was a chauffeur-driven car with the engine running right next door to where we were filming. I don't know what that was about. Really.
Okay.
But it served very well because it was pouring with rain on the day we filmed. So every time it was raining, we just got in his chauffeur-driven car and sat there. But it sat there for the morning, and I think he was only meant to be used for an hour, but it took us about 2.5 hours to shoot his sequence. And then he sped off in his chauffeur-driven car. Just as an afterthought, I said to him just before he left, "John, could you just sing a medley of hits from various musicals?" So we literally sat in his chauffeur-driven car and with the microphone in his face, and he just went, "Oh, what a beautiful morning," or whatever it was. And he had no idea what it was for. I didn't tell him what it was for. And we never told him about the idea of giving away his CDs to get into the Doctor Who experience. And I'm not sure if he knows now.
I went to the Doctor Who experience a couple of years ago, And sort of as a joke, because we have some friends there, the condos, and I asked them, I said, just sort of, so how many people try to pay with John Barrowman CDs? And the guy behind the table goes, so apparently that's a thing that a few people did try.
Well, no, it's actually the people who work there that we used. So it's actually the people behind the desk who were doing it. So I dare say they'd be very happy to take a John Barrowman CD if you have any spare. Are they cheaper or not than the tickets are? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm really bad with the dollar to pound. Speaking of the experience and that whole day of filming, what was that like, sort of going in, grabbing your old costumes and?
It was great.
Yeah.
We loved it. Yeah, we were just having fun doing it. I think that was the thing, and that's what I think attracted Colin and Sylvester to the idea of the project, is that we just had fun doing it. And I was running around like a maniac, trying to sort out various next shots, next locations, and things like that. And I remember looking across at one point at Colin and Sylvester sitting on a chair, having a cup of tea, and thinking, how have I wasted so much of my life? Because that's what you do as an actor, you just sit around having cups of tea and waiting for the next scene. And so I was tremendously excited by doing this directing thing and writing it. But I think they had a great time doing it as well, because we were just being us.
Yeah.
And you know, showing a side of us probably that especially Colin has not had a chance to show that much. You know, and Sylvester's a bit more known for being a comedian in that sense, but Colin, I think, is fantastic in it, and he grew into the part, as it were.
Everyone really seemed to be enjoying themselves, which really showed.
We did. Anyway, we carried on, and we got the footage from. I sadly didn't go down and film Peter Jackson. He sort of filmed himself, so I got sent the footage for that. But it was much as I asked him to do. And we got all the companions in for. They were only in it for a tiny moment, but it was worth it. And blowing up Adric again was nice. Because I saw it as being part of Stephen Moffat's dream.
Yeah.
Anyway, so by that time the script, I think, was probably about 40 minutes long, and we went along to film the editing bit with Stephen Moffat, and as we were filming that bit, he suddenly halfway through looked up and said to me, "I've just realised I'm the baddie in this film." I said, "Yeah, well, I sent you the script. You should have read it." Anyway, he was very good, and he went along with it absolutely fine. And there was, he had to be persuaded about the playing with the David Tennant and the Max Smith dolls. But I thought that was nice.
Nice little sort of Spaceballs.
Because that's how I always envisaged Stephen Moffat, playing with this, because he is the most mad Doctor Who fan. When I first met him years ago at a dinner that was given by somebody, a mutual friend of ours, the after-dinner game was show Stephen Moffat a black and white still from an early Doctor Who story, and he will tell you not only which story it was, which episode it was, but how many minutes into that episode that scene appeared.
I think I have a new panel idea for when we finally
So the idea that Stephen Moffat just used to hang around, actually I think he did, in the early days, just playing with models of William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee, I thought was perfectly right. Anyway, we finally finished, and then I suppose we had the big battle of the edit, which I knew was going to happen, but I was preparing myself for, because they then wanted to, having filmed about 40 minutes of it, they then wanted to cut about 25 minutes of that 40 minutes, because and they said to me, well, not Stephen, but Brian said to me, I think it's better. We think these things are better if they're 10 to 15 minutes long, rather than 35 minutes long. And I think he misunderstood. What they wanted to do was they wanted to make it something that everybody who watched it would enjoy.
Right.
And my focus was, I wanted to make it for everybody who missed us in the 50th anniversary would enjoy. And I wasn't particularly interested in whether it appealed to a broad audience. I just wanted to fill a very particular gap. Because of these wretched questions you lot have been asking me at convention.